Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Erik Peterson. I serve as Senior Vice President for Policy at the Afterschool Alliance. We have a couple more folks in the waiting room, so we're gonna give it just a few more seconds here, and then we will kick off with our monthly policy pulse. All right, I have 1 minute after 12 Eastern time, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us. This is our fourth episode of Policy Pulse, updating the after-school and policy landscape. We're actually brought to you this month 1 week earlier than usual. Usually we do these the second Friday of every month, but we're doing that in anticipation of the After School for All Challenge is coming May 6th, and also coincidentally, the day that today the president released his FY 2026 summary or skinny budget, which was posted on the White House website just about 2 hours ago now, around 10 this morning, and we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. After a policy update, diving into the budget, as well as a couple other things that are going on at the federal level that affect the after school and summer field, I will then turn over to my colleague here at the After School Alliance, Sean Gray. He's going to walk us through how you can raise your voice next week in support of after school and summer programs. Couldn't come at a more important time with the so-called skinny budget coming out today. That really sets the priorities and values for the administration going into Congress, but we'll talk about that right now. So let's jump to the policy update for this month. The fiscal year 2026 appropriations process. Just a reminder about how this works, because we have a couple different funding processes going on right now in Congress, and we'll talk about the other one, budget reconciliation, a little bit later. But a reminder, this is the annual spending process for Congress. So this happens every year. As you know, we just wrapped up the fiscal year 2025 several months late, back in March. The way this works is the president proposes a budget. Supposed to be in early February, and then the House and Senate appropriations subcommittees and then their full appropriations committees consider that, ultimately write their own spending bills, which are then due really by the end of the current fiscal year. So that's September 30th for the new fiscal year, FY 26, starting on October 1st. It is not unusual when a new administration comes in to have a delay in the budget, although this was, I think, a longer delay than usual. And the full budget, of course, is not yet out. That is expected still out later this month, potentially in mid-May. But the skinny budget, again, did come out today. Was posted on the White House website around 10 o'clock. It's not, again, the full budget proposal, so it does not have individual program funding levels included, but it does have enough detail to know, and we feel comfortable saying, based on what has been out, that federal funding for after school and summer would be really decimated under this proposal. For the Department of Education overall, there's a $12 billion cut proposed in for FY 26, fiscal year 2026. That's about 15% off the current fiscal year, which gets a little gray, and in that we still don't know the final numbers for fiscal year 2025. We're still waiting on those from the agency, from the administration as well. It does appear from the proposed budget that Title I is reportedly preserved. It says in there several times, although there isn't a funding level next to it, preserved at its current level. Title I, of course, mostly goes to support schools serving high proportion of low-income students, and can be used for after school and summer, although primarily is used for during the school day. It also proposes a new K-12, kindergarten through 12th grade, so-called simplified funding program that's proposed to consolidate 18 competitive and formula grant programs into a new formula grant, and then a separate special education simplified funding program that consolidates 7 IDEA programs into a single grant. So 2 new proposed sort of block grants that would go from the federal government down to the state level, in addition to keeping Title I, which also basically operates in a similar way as a formula grant. We don't know a lot about this new consolidated grant program, but we know that it's proposed to be about $2 billion across all 50 states and territories, and that it represents a cut of $4.5 billion to other education grants. So if you do the math and you read between the lines, which I've been doing for the last couple hours since this was released, funding for things like 21st Century Community Learning Centers would be eliminated, and possibly after school and summer could be a use for the new simplified funding program, but also teacher professional development, which is Title II grants, Title IV Part A, which provides sort of whole child supports, education technology, and a host of other things, as well as, again, those other 18 or other 16 or so education formula and competitive grants that would all sort of go into that. So it's not hard to look at once you add the numbers up to see that it's unlikely that 21st century as we know it under this proposal would continue. More details, though, are expected later this month when the full budget comes out. But the budget overview does give us enough detail to know that there's, in addition to 21st century, which would obviously be devastating for families and communities and the after school and summer field, that there's a whole host of other impacts on the out of school time field as well. We'll talk a little bit later about recent AmeriCorps changes and grant terminations, but for the budget itself, it does list the AmeriCorps agency as well as the Institute for Museum and Library Science and a host of other what they call smaller agencies as being proposed for formal elimination under the proposal. It would formally eliminate the teen pregnancy prevention grants, the Department of Health and Human Service, which we know support older youth and adolescent after school and summer programs, as well as the Community Development Block Grant, which goes to local governments and can be used for after school as well. It also appears, although it's not 100% certain, to keep the Child Care Development Block Grant level of funding with last year. STEM education would be pretty heavily impacted through this budget proposal as well, with the proposed elimination of the National Science Foundation's STEM education, as well as NASA STEM education funding. It's not the whole foundation, but the STEM education pieces. Again, while the proposal I feel like would be devastating to families and students, it's really important to remember that this is simply a budget proposal or a blueprint. What matters most is what Congress chooses to do with their FY 2026 spending bills. And so really critical that they hear from constituents loud and clear that this funding can't be eliminated or consolidated away. I think it's important to speak out against the proposal, even in the skinny form before we know it all, know all the details, because again, this is a reflection of values and priorities. And I encourage folks we'll drop the link in the chat, encourage folks to sort of read some of the narrative on the budget proposal as well. We know that federal funding for after school and summer through 21st century is vital for about 1.4 million children and youth in 10,000 sites around the country. We know it does academic supports, helps accelerate learning. We know it keeps young people safe. We know after school meals and summer meals are provided through these sites that would potentially go away into this proposal, physical activity, enrichments, learning opportunities that complement the school day, as well as the foundational skill development that happens and positive youth development that happens in summer and after school programs through 21st century, as well as AmeriCorps and some of these other important funding programs as well. And also we know that working parents will know that their children are safe and supported when they're in after school programs like those funded through at the local level through 21st century. The other piece that's important to highlight, I feel like, is that 21st century also provides really critical infrastructure and capacity building at the national and state level that really focuses on program quality, on providing staff training. And that piece is vital and goes beyond even the grantees that just benefit directly at the local level from 21st century funding. That sort of infrastructure and support through state education agencies and through the National Technical Assistance Center at the federal level, is really important to the field, and any kind of sort of consolidated, or the new simplified funding structure would mean that those funds that currently through 21st century are set aside at the state level to provide those kinds of capacity building supports wouldn't be there. So it's both the supports as well as the programs at the local level, which could be impacted by this proposal. Really important, I would say, to reach out to Congress to make sure that they know what impact this proposal would have on local communities, on local programs, on parents and families, and on schools. And Sean's going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. I wanted to highlight the process really quick to see sort of what's next. So again, we expect the full budget proposal in a couple of weeks. And then the Congress really starts, they've already sort of started on the FY26 process, but they'll really pick that up with subcommittee and full committee level markups, possibly in May, but more likely in June and July. The chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, Tom Cole from Oklahoma, has said he wants to get his funding bills, all 12 spending bills done before the August recess. So that's the end of July. I want to thank the more than 300 state, local, and national organizations from all 50 states that signed on to our letter in support of 21st century funding. We plan to send that up now that the budget proposal is out to the Hill on Monday. We'll drop a link in the chat if folks still want to sign on to that letter. We'll add folks until we get that to Congress to the appropriators on Monday. A couple of things I wanted before I hand it over to Sean that I wanted to flag. So obviously the big thing is this budget proposal. We've been waiting for that. We've been sort of talking about that coming. And now that at least it's here in the skinny form, it allows us to really make a strong case as to why we need to continue to support 21st century, just like 8 years ago when the Trump administration proposed elimination of 21st century, and we were able to actually get increases in funding as a result of their proposal to eliminate it. But I want to talk about budget reconciliation, which is the other and separate money-related process going on in Congress right now. Committee level markups, budget reconciliation are currently happening, including this week on Tuesday. The House Ed and Workforce Committee did their sort of long drawn-out markup, passed on a party line vote. And that language then will go into the budget committee with other committee legislative language that will be put together into the large budget reconciliation package. There was no K-12 education related funding cuts that were included in that reconciliation markup in the education committee earlier this week. It was primarily saving $351 billion over 10 years, and that mostly came from decreased federal spending on current student loan repayment plans and instituting a new plan. So certainly will impact indirectly, particularly young people wanting to go to college who need that student loan support, as well as potentially staff and programs. But in terms of things like federal work study and the child nutrition programs who could have been impacted through the Education Committee's reconciliation, that did not appear to be included. Still a long process, though, with reconciliation. Speaker Johnson in the House has revised his timeline for that bill, but the goal now is to have enactment set into law by the president by July 4th. So we'll continue to talk about that in coming months. Wanted to give a quick update on the AmeriCorps piece as well. So in addition to what we mentioned about the budget proposal last Friday, a week ago, the agency terminated about $400 million in grant program funding. That supports about 1,000 local programs, about 32,000 AmeriCorps members estimated to be impacted, as well as senior volunteers and vistas. The AmeriCorps program is really vital for after school programs. We estimate around a third of all AmeriCorps positions support after school and summer programs. So we've been tracking this pretty closely. We have a blog and statement up on this from earlier this week that we'll link here. And we're also collecting impact stories. So if you were impacted by this at the state or local level and want to share what that impact means for your communities and families, I also encourage you, if that's the case, to reach out to members of Congress and make sure they know the impact on their constituents. There was a lawsuit filed on Tuesday this week by about 24 states and Washington, D.C. attorney generals to stop those cuts, alleging a violation of the Administrative Procedures Act, as well as undermining constitutional separation of powers. And we do have an action alert from Voices for Service that we've been promoting for folks to raise their voices on that as well with Congress. Last thing on the administration side, the Office of Child Care released an information memo this week on the 29th, the expanding educational freedom and opportunities for families. This is a result of an executive order that was issued back in January from the president that asked a number of agencies, including Health and Human Services, to look at ways that they could support school and parent choice for students. So the agency looked at the Child Care Development Block Grant and how it could be used in non-public school settings, including by private and faith-based care providers, to offer a full range of options for school-age students' care and development. The memo really emphasizes that this is for CCDBG does not support any services provided during the regular school day. And we do feel we'll have a blog up on this if it's not up already, up shortly, that my colleague Jillian worked on. Particularly if you're a faith-based provider, it does have some good language in there around increasing access. We think some of the things actually in this executive order may help at the state level with state agencies looking for ways to increase access to school age, after school, and summer programs to tap into the Child Care Development Block Grant. And the last thing, I don't keep saying that, but the last thing for real, before I turn it over to Sean to talk about some ways you can really raise your voice and our activities for next Tuesday, is I wanted to flag the National Academies released a report yesterday on a webinar called The Future of Youth Development, Building Systems and Strengthening Programs. We're super excited for this report. It really looks at out-of-school time programs and promoting positive child and youth development, has some great recommendations in there. Encourage you to check it out, and we'll drop the link in the chat. Reports like that are really critical to make the case, particularly in the atmosphere we're in now, that federal investments in out-of-school time programs and youth development programs are really, really vital. So that's sort of, I think, covering the why it's important to reach out. Hopefully all of those make it clear that it's important that your elected officials, as well as mine and all of ours, need to hear from their constituents about the importance of investing in after school and summer. So now Sean's going to talk about the sort of how, what, and when to raise your voice. Sean?
Thanks, Eric. So given all the policy developments going on, it's absolutely critical time to remind our leaders why after school matters and to urge them to support after school and funding for summer and after school programs. So next Tuesday, May 6th, that's our nationwide day of action for after school. We hope you'll join us and take the After School for All challenge. As Eric mentioned, the president has released his budget, and it appears to eliminate the only federal funding streams dedicated to after school and summer. 21st Century Learning Centers programs serve 1.4 million youth at local level, at local programs nationwide. Just keep that in mind. So we got to let Congress know why after school is important and that after school works. We're asking all after school supporters to take a minute and call or email your representative. Everything you need to know is on our After School for All challenge page. If at all possible, we ask for you to call your member of Congress. Taking the time to make a phone call and speak directly with a member of with a staffer, it makes a big impact. It shows that you are personally invested in the after school issue. So to make a phone call, you'll press the call button. You'll be asked to enter your contact information, and this is only used to match up you with your representative. And remember to use your home address because you're calling as a representative in your area. When you click the make the call button, the system will call the phone number and it will that you entered, and you'll start dialing the member of Congress automatically. So make sure you stay near your computer when you make the call. We have a short script that we prepared as a guide to help you share your own message about the importance of after school. You can preview the script on the action page, and it will also be provided for you after you've hit that make the call button. It shows it. I know some folks may feel nervous about calling the member's office, but remember, you are the constituent. Members have staff that are dedicated to taking your calls and hearing messages from you directly. So if making a phone call is not feasible for you, please send an email. When you click the email button on our challenge page, you'll be prompted to enter your home address. And just like the phone call, it processes your address to identify your member of Congress. A pre-written message will pop up. You can edit it with all the details about your program and why it matters. And then go ahead and click the add your voice button, and it will send your email out. So after you've made a phone call or placed an email, share your experience on social media. So while we're feeling great about raising our voice, as you should be, you take the next step and motivate others to join you. Um, sorry, our system, sorry, our system will give you a prompt, and after you make the phone call, you'll send an email and you'll share the action on social media. Sorry. This extra step is a big help. People are more likely to act when you know a contact has done so. If you really want to feel part of the challenge, follow the hashtag #AfterSchoolWorks on May 6th and get inspired by all the voices and community that you see speaking out. Our digital kit will make it fun and easy for you to take part. We have pre-written social media you can copy and post on your digital action toolkit, on our digital action toolkit page on the challenge page, sorry. From now through May 6th, use the messages to encourage people to join the challenge. On May 6th, post a message thanking your members of supporting after school and summer programs. Tag your representatives because their office tracks these posts. The kit also includes tools to find your members of Congress and their tags for social media. Also, join us next week, or sorry, join us on our next Policy Pulse call on June 13th for more updates. And make sure to sign up for our policy updates using the QR codes on this page. Thank you for taking action to support the after-school programs our youth and families count on. Appreciate you joining.